show on 580 WIBW and FM News 1049. Thank you for tuning in today. Coming up on today's show, we're going to have a special follow up to the day of discussion that we had back in June as we catch up on what's happened both across the country and right here in Topeka since then, and talk about some of the ways that we can be proactive in bringing people together during this difficult time. And just like yesterday, we are going to live stream the event on our Facebook page at WIBW News. So not only will you be able to get a behind the scenes view, you'll also be able to hear some of our extended chat that you're not going to be able to hear on the air. And studio engineer Britt is joining us from the Alpha Studio. How are you doing, Britty?
I'm doing all right. It's the last day before I leave for a decently long vacation, so it's
So excited for you.
It's pretty cool. I wish I had some notable thing that I was getting ready to go do or somewhere to go, but I'll just take the downtime and I'll take the relaxation and I'll figure it out. I'll have a lot of time to hang out and get that situated. So I'm sure I'm going to be well acclimated with my new house for sure.
I bet you will. And of course, you've got the new games that you could be playing, and you've got a big, beautiful backyard. Are you going to be spending some time out there?
I would love to. Maybe actually I'll have some time to do some pest control because I love my backyard. I have a back deck. I have a nice hammock out there and stuff like that. And I always want to go out there, but every time I go out there, it's like I'll be outside for 5 minutes and I'll get 7 bug bites. So
oh my goodness.
I don't know if my backyard has a problem. I don't know if I just taste great. I don't know what's going on, but man, these bug bites just hang around and I can't stand it. So I want to get back out in the hammock. We'll figure it out. Like I said, I got plenty of time to figure out what I'm doing.
Well, I hope you figure it out. And of course, I will miss you. And actually, I won't be talking to you for 2 weeks because by the time you come back, then I'm taking some vacation. So the show will still be on all of next week. Please, nobody freak out. We've got Marco filling in for you. But then following that, I'm going to be off for a week. So no, we didn't get canceled. It is just the fact that I'm taking a vacation week and just having a moment to enjoy myself and get away from things. So I'm looking forward to that. And of course, I'm not sleeping too well because every time we do a big show that is outside of our typical format, I'm always kind of on pins and needles, just trying to make sure that everything goes right. And even this morning, I had some technical stuff going on with my equipment. I'm like, Jesus, I do not need anything else going on today. I got to focus. And we're trying to bring SJ Hazim on. He is having some difficulties connecting up. So when he comes into our area, we'll bring him on. But I am totally excited to be talking to Johnathan Sublet. And here's why I know I'm excited. Johnathan and I were doing a quick chat for today's show, which turned into a 3-hour chat last night, which I love because I can actually just sit and listen to him. And every time I hang up the phone, I feel like I know something. I know a lot more than I did before I picked up the phone, for one. And I'm always enlightened and I'm inspired to push to do more. So thank you for just the role that you've had in my life, Johnathan, and for what you're getting ready to bring. And for those who don't know Johnathan, he is actually lead pastor at the High Crest Fellowship Church here in Topeka. He was just told today that he is one of the 20 under 40. Yay, because that's something I'll never be. Yeah. And then also, you're getting ready to be one of the keynote speakers today for the State of the Community Talk. So thank you for being on. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You are too kind and gracious with your words. I tell you what, I'm doing well. But running, like you said today, and just fighting all the tech problems and different things. But that normally happens. That's life, right? That's a part of it and part of this journey. So I'm excited about another conversation with you as we had last time. And so just continue to go.
And we do want to say thoughts and prayers going out to Bob Ross. He was supposed to be joining us today. And I mentioned on Monday that he was admitted to the ER and the ICU. And unfortunately, he is still in the hospital recuperating. So we are sending all of our prayers and best wishes to him as he is trying to recover. Now, what I want to do is to kind of peel the layers back and go from June to right now with you, Jonathan, and ask
Mhm.
you, what do you think has changed from the time that we had the discussion, which was literally, I think, about a week after the death of George Floyd, to this particular time? Do you think we're making any inroads? Is the climate worse? Give us a synopsis of what it is that you're thinking.
Um, when you say what has changed, so
Do you
June.
think that we've actually, because people are more aware of it, and seemingly, I mean, on the surface, some people could say, well, what more do you want? They've got some changes going on in marketing. There's no more Uncle Ben's, or we're phasing out Aunt Jemima, or we're taking out statues now. I mean, do you count that as a change, or is that what I think is just a distraction because it's not addressing the real issues?
So here's the deal, like it's what you're going after, right? If you're going after secondary change, then oh yeah, there's some statements made. But if you're going after primary, your goal has to be primary core level change, heart change, because that will sustain long-term developments. And so I was concerned. There's a part of celebration that happens when you see recognition and awareness increase, but it also brings some concern because we live in a world where it's easy to make statements and write checks that you never have to cash.
Yes.
And so I knew there were people making statements that were going to be hard to follow up on in tangible actions. And so and we live in a world too where we live by sound bites and by screen captures and by shares and tweets and different things of that nature. We live in a world where you can have a ministers conference and hotels will say we've never seen more pornography use in the 24-hour period than when all those pastors were here.
Wow.
And so we live in a world where a ton of college students will go to a conference every year, and I'm trying to remember the name of the conference. It's kind of a young adult ministry conference, and then they're all pledged to end it, right, in human trafficking. But then a lot of them are addicted to pornography, and so they don't see how that plays a part in it. And so I didn't expect the deep entrenched division that has always been there, but we've been good. So we've been good. Like, have you ever like been at a family dinner and you tell your family that you're bringing somebody, or somebody else from your family is bringing somebody for the first time to family dinner, and so your mom or grandma or whoever, aunt, whoever hosts, you got to be up in the ranks in the hierarchy to host. They tell everybody, they shoot everybody this secret message away from the guests: be on your best behavior. Don't bring up such and such. Don't talk about such and such. We've been in that for a long time. But then what happens? That one family member, you know in your mind now that I'm talking about
Usually
it.
somebody's uncle or aunt, yes, gonna say something crazy.
They say something and it triggers everybody else.
Yes.
And all the stuff that people have been trying to suppress throughout the day comes out.
Yes.
That's what George Floyd was. And so
Wow.
what we're seeing is we're seeing a whole bunch of stuff that we didn't talk it out. And so now we're starting to act it out. And so here's the deal: is as long as you try to suppress and muffle those emotions and feelings that you have inside, then you don't own them, and you can't start to work through them. What we're seeing now, the anger and the division, is actually a part of the healing process. It scares a lot of
talk about that.
Here's the deal, right? When you live in a world where arguments and conflicts always meant divorce, you grow up and you are afraid of conflict because you think it's always going to end and break up. And so you never see that conflict is neutral and it can be a actually healthy thing. And so because you're so afraid of conflict, because in your past, conflict has always meant divorce or breakup. and this bad thing and this negative thing, or physical violence or emotional violence, you can't handle conflict in a healthy way, so you suppress, and there's never any growth that happens. Where in the midst of conflict is when we get real about what is going on, that we are able to ground our emotions in love, and we're able to work together toward a solution that's best for the growth of us both, even when it's hard, even when it means me making some heart level changes and questioning myself and holding myself accountable and asking you to hold me accountable, and for me to provide restitutions for actions that I've taken that are wrong and hurtful and harmful, even when they're unintentional. And so right now we're in a period of time where we're seeing emotions that we haven't talked about and suppressed because we were afraid that if we talked about race, if we talked about equality, if we talked about moral order, that it was going to break up our group or our society. When in actuality, not talking about it has caused us to be unhealthy in our relationships with one another. And we can't humanize each other because we don't even know how to handle our own emotions.
I also feel like if you don't talk about it, that's just the method that you get stuck into. You know, it's like, well, we don't discuss these sort of things. And it's only natural if you feel like your voice is not being heard or your concerns that you're trying to bring up are not being acknowledged. You get frustrated. That's a very frustrating experience. So like at a whole here, a lot of frustration is kind of bubbling over because it feels like the arguments and the thoughts are falling on deaf ears. And if leadership on a big scale is not acknowledging this, not treating it like a real problem, and in fact trying to flip it around, it gets very frustrating. And it's not surprising you see some of the things that happen.
Think about this. I'm not a part of the faith where you have to go to confessional, but some of my friends and family members are. When you go into confessional, you're supposed to be able to share the deepest, darkest thing in your heart. In my faith and where I live at, you're supposed to have a community group or accountability partners where you can share that kind of thing with. But if you're a part of a faith body and you've been told we can't talk about race or politics, things like that, right? What would ever cause you to think that you can share about the other nasty, dirty stuff in your life? And so we're in a society like you're saying, it's hard because we're in a society right now where the places where we're supposed to have been able to go and talk about these things that are burdening our hearts and get some real direction of how to handle them in a loving and compassionate way that's both that's balanced with nuance. We haven't been able to do that. And so now we're looking to other guides, and it's dangerous right now. It is truly dangerous right now because the amount of dehumanizing and unloving and uncompassionate like speech and actions,
lack of empathy.
Oh man, look at here. We don't know how. One of my favorite stories is Abraham Lincoln. He was asked to give a review of this general that hated him, and he gave this glowing word about the guy. And the reporter was like, "Hey man, how can you say that? This guy hates your guts." And he said, "Well, you ask my opinion of him, not his of me."
Wow.
And so it's the deal of, can you affirm something in that person that sits on the opposite side of an issue from you? And I'm not going to use the word enemy or opponent. The person that sits on the opposite side of an issue from you or point of view is not always your enemy. They're just somebody who thinks differently about a matter than you. And we need to stop making everybody our enemies that holds a different point of view.
What we're going to do, this conversation's already gotten good, and SJ's just joined us on the screen. What's up, brother? We are going to take a break, get into more deep conversation about race in America, race in Topeka, including learning about how we can come together as a community to learn empathy for those around us. That's coming up on the Danielle Norwood Show on 580 WIBW.
details.
We're back with the Danielle Norwood Show on 580 WIBW and FM News 1049. We're talking with Pastor Johnathan Sublet, lead campus pastor for the Highcrest Campus Fellowship Bible Church and the founder and chairman of the board for Sent Topeka, as well as SJ Hazim, who is founder of Project Forward Top City, as we continue our day of discussion dealing with issues of race in Topeka and around our state. And SJ, I want to bring you on because on Tuesday night, the Topeka City Council met to talk about police reform and to get the public's thoughts on the matter. And you were one of the speakers. In our remaining time, which we only have a couple of minutes, would you share what you told the commission?
Yes. I tell you, I think there's one issue that needs to be solved, and is blind loyalty. Blind loyalty. And unfortunately, we have blind loyalty on all sides. I mean, whether it's a political party, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's Back to Blue, it could be a church, it could be anything. But what happens is people are so committed to whatever side they're on, they're turning a deaf ear to everything else. And the way around that is personal accountability, to where people got to get the intestinal fortitude to be able to speak to their own parties if somebody's wrong. If I'm by somebody and I say I'm a demonstrator, and somebody comes out here and throws a trash can through some glass, and I know this person, and I turn a blind eye to it, I'm so loyal to a fault that it's my fault. And we have to get away from that. It's not that hard to know what right and wrong is, but it's so clouded because people get so attached to whatever it is that they're doing. They put their whole identity into a thing. And that's the problem. So I addressed that. And, I've got a whole lot of messages afterwards from some people who have been like, they've done this in the past to where they should have followed the law. They should have done this, and that wouldn't happen to them. When you don't listen to authority, you can get killed. So some of these people actually reached out, and they were like, hey, I think what this one guy said, he said, I don't agree with you on much at all. But what you said, I think that was perfect. That's what people need to hear. He said people, he said statistics are good, information is good, but I'm not listening to none of that stuff if I'm not fooling with you. But when you actually come to the whole thing of personal responsibility and accountability, that's what can get people to actually maybe think a little bit different. So what I believe my role is, I walk this line, and the line I walk is I talk about how do I feel when things happen to me? What do I think problems are? Because people reach out to me for my opinions. And since I'm very opinionated, I will tell people my opinion. And that's why some people like me, some people hate me. Either way it goes, you can call me what you want, just don't call me collect.
Well, on that note, we're actually going to take a quick break to get the latest ag market news and weather. When we come back, we're going to learn why awareness of the situation isn't enough. It's the day of discussion. Follow up on the Danielle Norwood Show on 580 WIBW and FM News 1049.
WIBV.com.
We're back with the Danielle Norwood Show on 580 WIBW and FM News 1049. We're spending the entire hour having the hard conversations about issues of race in our community with Pastor Johnathan Sublet, who's lead campus pastor for the High Crest Campus Fellowship Bible Church, as well as being the founder and chairman of the board for St. Topeka, and S.J. Hazim, who's founder of Project Forward Top City. And I want to shift our focus a little bit to something that one of our esteemed guests said recently, and I quote, "Awareness isn't enough. No matter how aware you are, your knowledge will remain abstract and theoretical until you care about the people who face the negative consequences of racism." Jonathan, tell us what you meant by that.
Yeah, it's like this. I could have bad breath and be aware that breath mints and gum exist, but they'll do absolutely no good with me just being aware of them. In order for my bad breath to be helped, I have to go from the point of being aware of breath mints and chewing gum to having it to have a relationship with my mouth. There has to be contact. There has to be a relationship, and I got to be committed to sucking on that mint or chewing that gum until my bad breath is cured. And so it's like a bad cook who you say, there's salt and pepper, right? And they say, yeah, I know. And you're like, well, that wasn't a suggestion.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
You need salt and pepper. If it's going to affect the way that your food tastes, you need those spices and that salt and pepper to have a relationship with your food. And you need to be committed to using this, not just when I'm watching, but also when I'm not watching when you cook. And so one of the deals is that awareness alone, awareness of the speed limit doesn't cause us not to speed.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
True.
So the thought that awareness could change an issue, just that doesn't think of how many people they say that over 80% of the people who have open heart surgery or double bypass don't change their diets and exercise after having their chest sawed open. Don't change. They know that they have a problem. They know that they could die if they don't change, and they don't change. Awareness does not change it. So here's a quote. They said they did a study of 100 friend scenario, and they said white people had just one black friend, one Latinx, and one Asian friend. In the same scenario, black people had 8 white friends, 2 Latinx friends, and 0 Asian friends. So when we have, our cultures are different, are like, even within our families, our cultures are different within the same race. What's needed to move us forward is deep relationships. We need to get back around dinner tables. So I'm not ever going to tell you don't protest or don't advocate, because those are tools that we're supposed to use to help manage our government, which the people have the power in our republic, our democratic republic. And so those are tools, those are effective tools. But I feel like the most impactful change that we can make is going to happen around dinner tables, in our backyards, around fire pits, as we do things that we enjoy together. And then we have to be committed. It's what I said before. We can't see conflict as equaling breakup. We have to know that we're going to get things wrong. Me and my wife get things wrong, but we're committed to each other. We said divorce is not an option. Therefore, I'm not afraid of telling her how I feel about stuff, and she sure enough ain't afraid to tell me how she feel about it. But since we're committed to one another, a lot of times before we go to bed, we've worked things out and we're on a healthy path forward. But you, if you're not committed to one another, you'll never bring up the hard stuff, and you'll never do the hard work that's necessary to actually bring about healthy change.
SJ, what's your reaction to that?
I love the way that he put that, especially, how the breath mints have to have a relationship with your mouth. Everything boils down to relationships and everything. And awareness, it's like, people can, everybody's aware blacks were slaves. Everybody's aware we were property. Everybody's aware of a lot of things. And one thing, when people talk about protesters and stuff like that, they mix that in with looters and rioting and put them all in the same bunch and things like that. And there's things that, with us being the home of Brown versus Board, I remember seeing these pictures when schools got reintegrated, and there might only be one Black person at that school, and I saw the protests that were held, and people right up, and there was a picture that stood out to me. There was a few white people right by this beautiful Black lady with their mouths wide open, just spewing hatred, and she was all by herself. But we complain about protests and riots now, when some of the same people who were doing that type of stuff back then. I mean, it's just bad. Grown people were just in flocks and groups. I mean, I can't even think about the courage that it took for those young high school and elementary school kids to have to walk into hatred like that. I mean, it hurts my heart. And then I think about this man that got shot in his back 7 times, and all over my feed, I'm seeing, follow the law, you don't get killed. It's heartbreaking. It's to the point to where I just had to pray for humanity the other night. I've had a rough week, but yet I'm going to continue to walk this line to where I'm unafraid to say I support Black Lives Matter and I support Back the Blue. I'm a board member on the Topeka Police Department. I have a board meeting right now, but I decided to be here. I had to make a choice, and people can.
And thank you.
Well, this is very important, and the police, they support me, I'm friends with the president of Black Lives Matter here in Topeka. He supports me. There's no reason you can't support both. And
thank you. Please say that, because I think that people think you support one or the other. And my whole thought during all of this is I am loyally going to be supportive of saying I support the police. However, I know that reform needs to happen, because things like Jacob Blake, things like George Floyd, those are just tips of the iceberg. And one of the blessings of technology is that we have phones with video cameras to be able to document these things. But these things have been going on for a long time. So I'm never going to be the person to say, I don't want the police around. If I'm in trouble, the first group I'm calling is the police, because I'm going to need some help. With that being said, not everybody that has that badge on should have that badge on, period, final. There are people who shouldn't be in ministry because of what they believe and how they are in their personal lives. I mean, if we're going to keep it real, let's keep it all the way real. There's always going to be somebody within a group that is going to be the bad seed. But that doesn't mean that you don't have churches. It doesn't mean you don't have the police. It doesn't mean that you don't have whatever group you're talking about. It simply means that reform needs to happen within that group. You don't take away the whole group. You just do some reforming to the group that has those people.
Can I read something that I posted yesterday right along the same lines that your guys were talking about? And it's short here. It says, I care about the trauma that people experience. That concern causes me to care about the trauma that the kids of Jacob Blake will suffer, and the trauma that the adult children of the Falwells will suffer. I empathize with law officers for the difficult positions that their career puts them in, and with people of color for the difficult positions that institutional, systematic, overt, and covert racism puts them in. I affirm the many great interactions that I've had in my life with law officers, and I also recognize areas where reform could take place due to the negative interactions that I or those that I know have had with law enforcement. I affirm the dignity, worth, and value of every person being made in the image of God, and acknowledge a need for moral order. We live in a world that keeps trying to force us to choose, to say either or, to be all or nothing. But we don't have to take the sucker's choice. We can choose a third way.
The world is solely missing nuance. Nuance is so missed nowadays. It really is so either polarized, like you said, pick a side one way or the other. And I would also just encourage people to kind of broaden what you see and what you know, and If you can help it, get off Facebook. I mean, generally, but if you are going to be on Facebook, I would say don't curate your feeds also to just reinforce your own beliefs. You need to have some varied stuff in there because it's so easy to just, the more you see and you get daily affirmed what you think you're right, and you don't know how to see things another way. And we need that so much now. We need to have some understanding, just on a broad scale. We need to stop being so one side or the other. I mean, my
Yeah.
goodness.
Britt, we rules are supposed to be a healthy, good thing for us, but we've taken rules and used them to allow us to be intellectually and emotionally lazy. So we stop wanting to be, in our efforts to not have to critically think, we have replaced rules. We have used rules to keep us from having to critically think and interact with those around us. And so rules are just supposed to be the boundaries to help keep us safe. They're not supposed to be what guides our interactions with each other. And so that's the deal. And it's like if you start replacing rules with relationship, it's just out of because I don't want to have to take and go through the effort of really being in a messy situation. And that's what relationships are.
And
Well,
this
it's like you and I were talking about yesterday, Jonathan. You said that real love takes hard work,
Yeah.
and there's no cliff notes to any of this. We got to do the hard work. All of us have to do the hard work, and sometimes I think that Caucasians are thinking that the people of color are just coming after them. We all need to do some hard work. We are all in this community. We're all in it together, and it's going to take all of us to make things better in Topeka and around the country and around the world. So, what we're going to do, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, Jonathan's going to give us maybe a little sneak peek about the live stream interview that he's hosting tonight called Courageous Conversations, and maybe a little sneak peek of what he's going to share during the State of the City address that he's going to be doing in a few moments. That's coming up on the Danielle Norwood Show on 580 WIBW. We're back with the Danielle Norwood Show on 580 WIBW and FM News 1049, finishing up our time on the day of discussion follow-up with Pastor Johnathan Sublet and SJ Hazim. And here's how I want to structure the rest of our show. Johnathan, I want to give you a moment to talk about tonight's conversation, as well as a little tease from this afternoon's speech. And then SJ, I want you to give us some closing words as well about what's on your heart and maybe where the city you think needs to go as we're trying to deal with issues of race in our community. But first of all, Johnathan, you're hosting a live stream tonight on Facebook and YouTube, which is called Courageous Conversations. Would you give us a preview of it?
Yes, I'm going to be interviewing the author of the book Church Forsaken, Practicing Presence in Neglected Neighborhoods. And his name is Jonathan Brooks. And we're actually we have an online book discussion group that you can be a part of, but you can find the discussion on our Fellowship Bible Church Highcrest campus, on our Facebook page and on our YouTube page. We'll be streaming it live at 7:30 tonight. And I just want to interview him and talk to him about his heart behind the book. He grew up in this neighborhood in Inglewood in Chicago that you hear a lot about on the news and in political rhetoric and different things of that nature. And then he left. He got educated in college away. And then he came back and he wanted to escape that neighborhood. And then something drew him back in. And he's seen this dramatic change in his neighborhood. And so he's just saying, like, there's a thing called practicing presence that's so important. And so I just want to talk about that. A lot of times we think that we can drop off checks or we can go do projects and that's going to change neighborhoods. No, there's a difference between saying that, yes, I believe that your neighborhood can be changed or be different and our neighborhood can be transformed. And so that's what we're trying to get at. And just a preview of what I'm talking about. I'm going to read to you the last question. You mentioned earlier that I was honored as being one of the top 20 under 40 in the city of Topeka. And the last question on the application asks, why should we honor you as one of Topeka's top 20 under 40? And here's what I wrote. I said, Rick Warren once said, a great chef is not defined by what they can prepare with a fully stocked pantry, but by what they can plate up when all they have is 2 fish and 5 loaves. The people of Highcrest are great cooks. If the committee chooses me, it will be because they recognize the greatness of my neighborhood. I am just a representative of them. We're not who they say we are. We are exceptional. We are hardworking. We shine when it's darkest. We persevere through all types of setbacks. We stick together. We rise from troubles that seem unthinkable. I just get to be a face. Pick me because Highcrest has earned it. Pick me because it will help me tell the story of great people doing awesome work with the least amount of resources imaginable. Pick me because choosing Highcrest means choosing Topeka. A community is always judged by how it loves its most vulnerable. And just maybe this platform may help close the gap in resources and be the difference needed to change the narrative of my neighborhood.
That's beautiful.
I'm a part of Highcrest. It's my hood. I love it. I think it's the greatest neighborhood this side of New Jerusalem. And I'm just encouraging people to be on this journey and to partner with us in this. And I live here. My kids go to school here. Most of my staff lives here because we truly love it and believe in this community.
Well, the committee got it right, may I say. SJ, I want to give you a moment to say what you'd like to say.
I want the people who say all lives matter, I want them to think for a minute. When you think of Black people, what comes to your mind? What comes to your mind? People who are screaming Black Lives Matter. When you think of white people, what comes to your mind? I want people to start taking themselves out of these groups for whatever it might be. You know, a lot of times people join gangs because the neighborhoods they live in, or protection, or different things they might want to. They want a bond, they want a family, they want something to grab onto. And a lot of people are grabbing onto things for different reasoning. And at the end of the day, I want people to take personal accountability and responsibility for whatever it is they're pushing. But if you're only back in the blue because you hate Black people, then let that be known. I mean, be honest, because the only side I'm on is the truth. So let's talk about it. That's it. That's what That's the side I'm on. I'm on the side of the truth.
Well, SJ, I appreciate you and your convictions and the fact that you shared, and the fact that both of you all are so intrinsically knit into the fabric of this community. So you are walking your talk each and every day, and I give honor to both of you. And that's really going to wrap up today's show. I can't think of a better way to finish our time. And thank you for your candor and your vulnerability and being on with us. And coming up tomorrow, we're going to have some staycation ideas for the Labor Day weekend. And we're also going to learn about what's going on this weekend with our Top City flavorista, Allison Beebe. That's coming up on Friday on the Danielle Norwood Show on WIBW Topeka. CBS News is next at 2 o'clock. Make the best of your day.